G'day, welcome back to the channel and welcome to another crazy dose of EV and net zero insanity in MGUY EV news for Saturday the 8th of February 2025. Be sure to follow me on the usual socials for more content, links in the description, and please make sure you're subscribed and have enabled all notifications so you don't miss out on any future videos. And if you'd like to support this channel, why not buy me a coffee? Click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen. So the first story we are looking at today concerns this company called Lion Electric. If you follow Stash Training, Patrick over there has been doing some videos about the fires that these buses have been susceptible to. He's already been warned off reporting on them. We'll see what happens, but they may not be so interested in pursuing YouTubers now because it looks like they're actually on the brink of collapse. Top Biden EV bus maker nears bankruptcy, leaving school districts and tens of millions of taxpayer dollars in limbo. EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin tells the Free Beacon he is committed to delivering answers on green spending. Good thing too. The Biden administration awarded Canadian electric bus company Lion Electric nearly $160 million to manufacture hundreds of battery-powered buses for school districts nationwide as part of its sweeping climate agenda. In recent weeks, Lion has initiated bankruptcy proceedings, laid off all employees tasked with building its buses, and paused manufacturing operations. Lion's financial demise leaves dozens of school districts, including those in California, Montana, North Dakota, Iowa, Alabama, and Maryland, questioning whether they will receive the buses the Biden administration promised them. Quick answer, they won't. Go back to the diesel buses that they've probably got in storage. They'll work just fine. Lion has yet to deliver $95 million worth of electric buses to 55 districts across the country, according to federal data reviewed by the Washington Free Beacon. At this time, we are working through the proper channels and keeping our attorneys abreast of the situation. Never a good sign. Dawn Wallace, the superintendent of Ohio Valley School District in Adams County, Ohio, which ordered buses from Lion, told the Free Beacon, "No buses have been delivered to our district. We are on hold." So, yeah, electric school buses are a terrible idea, especially in colder climates where they need heating to keep the poor kids warm on the way to school. All it does is use up the batteries. They need to go back to the depot for hours of charging, and they break down regularly, as this article shows. I mean, we've seen lots of stories about Lion and other electric school buses just breaking down, bricking out so that they don't do anything. It's absolutely insane. I just hope that the sanity returns at some point in the next few months. So another EV maker is on the brink of bankruptcy, and this is Nikola, which is kind of a joke on Nikola Tesla, as the first name of Tesla. And this is another one that is, as it says in the headline, EV maker recently worth more than Ford teeters on the brink as it mulls bankruptcy. Once hailed as one of America's most promising EV makers, a multi-billion-dollar green tech giant now appears on the knife's edge of bankruptcy. Nikola, a hydrogen Class 8 truck manufacturer, is in talks about an upcoming bankruptcy, according to the Wall Street Journal. Initial discussions appear to revolve around a potential Chapter 11 filing. Executives are debating a sale or restructure of the company, according to the Journal. A Nikola spokesman told the publication the company is still assessing its financial position. In 2020, the company went public before even producing a vehicle for the market, because that's the insanity of net zero, because people will throw money at these companies that don't even have a product just to get on the green bandwagon. At one point, Nikola's worth hit $30 billion and made it more valuable than Ford. Good grief. But the brand's image quickly crashed. Its rise was fueled by bold promises. from founder Trevor Milton, who was later convicted of securities fraud in 2022 for misleading investors about the company's zero emissions technology. Well, that tells you all you need to know about the green boondoggle. It is a Ponzi scheme, and it is funded by government money, and it's a disaster waiting to happen. So that's another one going out of business. And in our own capital city of Canberra, which is, the California equivalent in Australia, they are the extreme Greens that run that poor territory. It's like, the California of Australia. They've gone all out with buying electric fire trucks in the past, because that's what, they think they're virtue signaling their green credentials. But guess what? Both of Canberra's green fire trucks off the road for repair. What a terrible coincidence. Canberra's green firefighting machines, a plug-in hybrid Rosenbauer and fully electric Volvo, are both out of action for repairs, according to the Emergency Services Agency, ESA. The German-built Rosenbauer pumper truck is waiting on a part to arrive from Europe, while the electric Volvo breathing apparatus support truck is back with Volvo in Brisbane to fix a fault. The Rosenbauer was delivered to ACT Fire and Rescue in June 2023 at a cost of $1.6 million, which is about 2.5 times more expensive than a regular fire truck. These things cost a fortune, and just like the school buses, they need to go back to charge for hours. They have limited range, and they've got a gas engine as well to keep the battery charged. It's just ridiculous. A battery that can provide 2 hours of general duty driving before the engine kicks in. There you go. Providing a total range of about 1,000 kilometers. Anyway, there we go. So over to California. This is a very interesting story. It doesn't relate directly to the recent fires, but what it does is it talks about how much carbon dioxide is emitted by forest fires and bushfires. And this article here really just goes to show how puny and insignificant humanity is on global scale, natural global scale, because as this article points out in the headline, up in smoke, California's greenhouse gas reductions could be wiped out by 2020 wildfires. So this goes back to the wildfires a few years ago. And here it says, highlights wildfire emissions in 2020 were 127 million tons. Is that million tons of CO2? We'll check that a bit lower down. Wildfires are the second most important source of emissions in 2020. Wildfires in 2020 negate reductions in greenhouse gas emissions from other sectors. In this short communication, we estimate that California's wildfire carbon dioxide equivalent CO2e emissions from 2020 are approximately 2 times higher than California's total greenhouse gas emissions reductions since 2003. So all those trillions and trillions of dollars that California has spent on reducing its emissions over that period since 2003 has completely been negated by the 2020 wildfire. Not just once, but twice. And that's just a wildfire in a small part of California. This just goes to show how global, planetary, geological scale emissions dwarf anything that we do as a species on this planet. Absolutely dwarf it. All it needs is one big volcanic eruption, and it will offset all the emissions reductions policies around the globe for years. It just goes to show the insanity and the futility of trying to make these emissions reductions. We are spending trillions and trillions of dollars on this, and it can all just be, you know, wiped out by a belch from a volcano. I mean, it is utterly insane. This video is very interesting because, again, linked to California, it goes to show how much effort has to go in to dealing with the millions and millions of little lithium-ion cells that have been left in EVs, burnt battery systems in homes. And this guy explains just briefly what they are having to do. It is absolutely phenomenal. Take a listen.
Here what you can see behind us is the render-safe operations for lithium-ion batteries that we have collected throughout the burn zones. Currently we're in Palisades. We're doing the same operation over in Eden as well. This is the final step of safety with the batteries. Right? So when they are in the field, when they're uncontrolled up in the parcels, we call them, up in the neighborhoods, they are very unstable. They're very unsafe. Right? So when we harvest from the vehicles, from the energy storage systems, right, your residential power systems, we put them in drums and safely transport them down here. So that's really our first step of control. Once they get down here, we either crush them, as you see behind us, if they're the more burned out batteries that have already gone through thermal runaway. If they haven't gone through thermal runaway and they're identified as having a stranded energy or still have a state of charge and that potential for the really violent explosion, we put them in an electrolytic brine solution, right? So salt water that slowly and safely discharges that energy. Once that energy is gone, we've significantly reduced the potential for a violent thermal runaway event. So we'll crush them behind us here. By crushing those batteries, we have made it mechanically impossible for thermal runaway events to happen.
And here we go. They basically just put a steam, you know, a roller, heavy roller over these batteries to crush them to make sure that they can't go into thermal runaway anymore. And then they're scooped up and disposed of. I mean, basically, every house that has an EV or a battery pack, like a battery storage system on site, is basically a toxic waste hazard now. Every single house that has an EV in a disaster zone, EV or a battery battery storage system, is now a toxic waste hazard. And the scale of this cleanup is just beyond belief. If all of the links to these stories and videos always in the description, go and check them out. Go and watch this video. It is quite phenomenal, the amount of effort that has to be put in to disposing of these damn lithium-ion batteries. They are a menace. They are an absolute menace. Menace to the environment, menace to the first responders, menace to the people having to clean up this terrible fire. They are a disaster from start to finish. Turning to the UK now, this is an interesting story because the big headline is that there are more EV charging stations than petrol stations in the UK, apparently. I'm not sure whether that means individual charging stalls or charging locations. It's all a bit unclear, but the point of this is that there's never going to be enough charging points to meet demand for EV charging for an entire fleet of electric cars. The reason for that is because of the length of time, the charging conundrum that I've talked about before. If you want to charge quickly, then you need massive infrastructure. Otherwise, you're going to be charging slowly. And if you're charging slowly, then the throughput of cars through these charging stations is incredibly slow, which means you have to have lots of them. It's a zero-sum game, and you can't win, because as you increase the number of charging stalls, even if they're charging slowly, then you still have to increase the infrastructure to cope with that, the electrical grid supply to cope with that. And so no matter how many EV charging stations you put in, there will never, ever be enough. And this is what's been shown in this particular story. Hello, cat. If you see a cat in the background, That's that's my cat. Petrol stations massively outnumbered by electric car charging forecourts amid calls for more EV sites. Yes, there will never be enough. Never enough. There are more than 108,000 public charging devices for EVs across the country. There are now 4 times as many public charging locations around the UK than there are fuel forecourts, as experts call for more to be done to help motorists switch to electric vehicles. There's a tiny fraction of EVs on the road right now, and yet there's more charging points, but there's still not enough, despite that being just a tiny fraction of the cars on the road. New data from the AA reports that there are 8,329 petrol and diesel forecourts around the UK, while there are more than 37,000 public charging locations across the country. There are over 108,000 publicly available electric vehicle connectors. Okay. With more being installed every month as the UK continues to move towards its goal of blah, blah, blah. Yeah, well, I can tell you one thing. It's never, no matter how many EV chargers you put in, it will never, ever be enough. There will always be queues. There will always be waits. It will always be a pain. Check my other videos on the charging conundrum and the zero-sum game of charging, because there's no way around it. It's just physics. So this is I don't know if any of you are aware of this company called Lister. They used to fettle other cars. I think Jaguars. Yeah, Jaguars. They used to do some special editions of Jaguars in the past. So just like Jaguar, which is disappearing up its own backside, Lister unfortunately realizes that it cannot compete with the combustion ban and pauses new car development over it. Company has a long-awaited follow-up for the Lister Storm on the drawing board, but it can't be an EV. We don't hear much about Lister in the United States, but the UK company is alive and kicking. You'll find no shortage of tuned Jaguars wearing the company's green and yellow badge. But 32 years ago, there was the Lister Storm. Powered by a meaty Jaguar V12, the limited production supercar rivaled Italy's best exotics. 3 decades later, a success is in the works, but the UK emissions regulations might kill it before it has a chance to live. Taking to social media, Lister shared a statement regarding the impending zero emissions mandate that is currently set for 2035 but could switch to 2030. The issue isn't so much the mandate itself, but whether it will apply to niche, low-volume companies like Lister. So there's a tweet there from Lister. You can go and take a look at that at the link in the description. But basically, they're saying if they can't get within the approvals for low-volume, or if there's going to be an exemption for low-volume manufacturers, they're finished. They're finished. They're toast. Fortunately, Porsche looks like it's getting its sense of bearings back, because the news breaks that Porsche is betting on combustion engines despite net zero, because it realizes that the market, as it says, let's just read. Porsche is to expand its range of petrol cars after admitting internal combustion engines will be around for much longer than previously thought. Yes, probably decades longer. The German car maker confirmed it would overhaul its product portfolio to include additional vehicle models with combustion engines or plug-in hybrids. It scrapped a target for 80% of its vehicle sales to be all electric last summer. The decision comes despite looming net zero deadlines in Britain and Europe, which will compel car makers to sell fewer petrol cars and more electric vehicles, EVs. Already, car companies can be fined thousands of pounds in the UK for selling too many fossil fuel burning vehicles. Well, I think Porsche can probably see the writing on the wall for the net zero mandates in Europe. And basically, you know, it just won't sell cars in the UK while they have this stupid rule in place. But they're going to keep their petrol and diesel manufacturing lines going, I hope, so that it will continue to make these fantastic petrol cars like the Cayman and the Boxster. I mean, I really seriously hope they go back on their mad decision to make those electric only vehicles from now on, because they are some of the best Yeah, I drive a Boxster. I've got a vested interest, I guess, but it's an old one. It's 2013, so they are fantastic cars, and just converting them to electric milk floats is not going to make them. You buy a Boxster because of the flat six engine. That's the only reason you'd buy a Boxster, and the fantastic handling. It's just ridiculous to think that they could build an electric Boxster or Cayman and it would have the same appeal as the petrol version. It's I think they've had a rush of blood to the head, but it's slowly they're slowly regaining their senses and starting to look with critical eyes upon the EV market. So this is another interesting story from the UK, especially given the absolute scaremongering and ridiculous, outrageous, fear-mongering nonsense that we're getting from the government in Australia about nuclear power. Nuclear power is the only way that we'd ever get to net zero, quite frankly, and still have a functioning electricity grid. If you want to go windmills and solar panels, then you won't have a grid. So you need nuclear. If you want to go net zero, you need nuclear. There's just no answer. There's just no other. It's just obvious to anyone with half a brain. But our government doesn't have even half a brain. So they're still opposing nuclear. And still, it's silly, three-eyed fish cartoons. How childish and juvenile can you be? But what else do you expect? Even in the mad net zero hell that is the UK, with Miliband in charge of net zero madness, even they realise that they've got to have nuclear power stations to back it up. As this article states, Starmer to slash red tape to build nuclear reactors. Planning rules will be ripped up to make it easier to build new nuclear reactors and create thousands of highly skilled jobs, the government has announced. Bravo. The reforms are the latest in a series of proposals designed to get Britain building to help grow the economy after powers for environmental quangos to delay infrastructure projects were removed. Hallelujah. It's always the environmentalists that stop this kind of development. So yeah, clip their wings. The UK was the first country in the world to develop a nuclear reactor, but the last time a power station was built was in 1995. Ministers have blamed this on suffocating red tape, leaving the UK lagging behind in the global race for cleaner, more affordable energy. Under moves announced today, mini nuclear power stations known as small modular reactors, which is exactly what we're looking to get here in Australia, SMRs, will be included in the national planning guidance, allowing them to be built in the UK for the first time. Well, I never thought I would say it, but the UK has done something sensible in respect of energy. And they are now, in that regard, they're ahead of Australia, which is still stuck in this, burning witches mentality of nuclear power. The scaremongering is just, it's unbelievable. And finally, another one of Trump's great acts since he got into power is getting rid of all the government money for electric vehicle charging stations. We never had to bribe people to build petrol stations. Why not? Because the market was there. Profit was there to be made. And so people would quite happily invest in building a petrol station or a gas station or whatever, because they knew that the market was there, the demand was there, and they could make a profit. So people did it. But that's not the case with EV charging, because A, there's no demand because people don't want to buy EVs. Also, there's no profit margin to be made because electricity is so frickin' expensive under net zero. So they have to bribe them to build them with government money. Why should they? If the market doesn't want to build EV charging stations, then too bad. So he suspended the boondoggle of the government. He's turned the spigot of government money off. President Donald Trump's administration halted the $5 billion Biden electric vehicle charging program, which has been criticized for its poor production of charging stations. Yeah, I think they built 7, count them, 7. Emily Biondi, the Associate Administrator for the Office of Planning, Environment and Realty, in a letter to the State Department of Transportation directors on Thursday, said the administration has suspended the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure (NEVI) program. The new leadership of the Department of Transportation, USDOT, has decided to review the policies underlying the implementation of the NEVI formula program. Accordingly, the current NEVI formula program guidance, dated June 11, 2024, and all prior versions of this guidance are rescinded. Bravo. I mean, I'm hoping that some of this sanity from the US will rub off on Europe, and who knows, it might eventually rub off on Australia. But at the moment, we are bringing up the rear in terms of energy sanity. We are still stuck in the past. We are still not prepared to consider small modular nuclear reactors, which would be the ideal thing for Australia, given its dispersed population. Build one in areas of population, and it makes just perfect sense than acres and acres of bloody wind farms and solar panels. It's literally insanity rules. But at least in the US, there is some sanity slowly returning. All right, that's it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. See you in the next one. Bye for now.